Matt McCall. Of course, did a great job before the tournament started here on the show, NBC Sports and the Field of 68 analyst, coached at UMass Chattanooga, SoCon Coach of the Year back in 16, SoCon tournament champs in 16 as well. And I bring up the SoCon, a smaller conference, coach, as we say hi and thank you very much. Just your reaction to what Fairleigh Dickinson did against Purdue. Now, that young backcourt of Purdue, we thought they could struggle come tournament time, and they did, but an incredible 16-1 upset there.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think it's got to be, even going back to the 16-1 upset with Virginia and UMBC, I thought this one was way more of a shocker, especially how much Purdue spent atop the rankings. Zach Edey, National Player of the Year candidate, probably going to win it. I think those votes are probably already done. I just thought it was a complete shock. And credit FDU, for being able to win that game. But, the lack of adjustments really by Purdue throughout the course of that game, and they just got tight. They got nervous. I mean, Zach Edey's dropping basketballs that normally he catches, and when he goes down and they go down and double team him and he kicks it out, guys, it seemed like we're hesitant to shoot, and they just got really tight and really nervous. And FDU is playing with house money, and they just kept letting it ride. I mean, Purdue's clearly the better team, the more talented team, but you saw it in the second round. And I even had FAU getting to the Sweet 16, beating Purdue. I'm not just saying that because I live down here in South Florida and have spent a lot of time around their program. I thought FAU could match up with Purdue, and their veteran guards, they're bigger, they're faster, and then they had have a big guy inside that could match up with Zach Edey and Vlad Golden. I had FAU getting to the Sweet 16. Credit Dusty May, credit the job that he's done this year with that team. That is a talented basketball team. They are talented, and they are deep, they are unselfish.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but Amal, you remember when we had Coach McCall on before the tournament, he did tell us FAU to the Sweet 16. Go ahead, Amal.
No question about it. Mike Somich, one of our sharp handicappers, said the same thing. He goes, Purdue's going to play FAU. We're taking FAU here, and you're absolutely right on that, Coach. I want to switch gears a little bit from a team that got off to a fast start, 13-0 this year, and then kind of hit some bumpy roads throughout the course of the season. That's Connecticut. Danny Hurley and company are now starting to really find themselves, it seems like. Jordan Hawkins had a tremendous second half against SMC yesterday, Coach. You might have heard a little bit of our conversation that Patrick and I were having before we came on the air. We were talking about the depth, the size, the athleticism, the perimeter shooting, and then Patrick made a great point. Maybe not a true point there, but when you look at this Connecticut team going up against an uber-talented and a great coach team in Arkansas, and then the other side of that bracket, the Zags and, of course, UCLA, how do you fancy their chances to come out of this region in the West?
Well, I think UConn is a team, and I like to use the word hardened. They've been through some things. They've gone through adversity this year and come out on the other side and turned it into a positive. You're talking about a team that at one point in time this season, I believe, was ranked number 1 in the country coming out of that the PK80, the Nike event out there in the West, was just playing such good basketball. But like you guys said before we came on, if Hawkins is going to shoot the ball like he shot the ball this past weekend, Sanogo is playing at a high level, and they've got that glue guy in Andre Jackson that can guard multiple positions. He can switch. He can guard bigs. He can guard guards. And he is really the difference maker from their team. Other guys are extremely talented, not saying anything against that, but he's that glue guy. And make no mistake about it, Coach Hurley is showing his team that clip of Coach Musselman taking his shirt off and twirling it around his head, and the UConn Huskies will be fired up to play that game. I can assure you of that.
I want to get your take on Tom Izzo. And Kansas State's not going to be an easy out, obviously, and they're a 7-seed Michigan State. During your career, Matt, have you had an opportunity to talk to Coach Izzo and just overall what he's done with this program over, 25-plus years?
It's truly remarkable, to be honest with you, what he's been able to do. I was a student manager on the bench, and we were a higher seed in the NCAA tournament playing in Tampa. We had Matt Walsh, Anthony Roberson, David Lee, Matt Bonner. We had pros on that team. We were a higher seeded team. I'm trying to remember exactly the year. It may have been 04, 03. And Michigan State just absolutely boat raced us in Tampa in the second round for them to go to the Sweet 16. Coach Donovan and him, I would always hear the conversations that they would have on the phone back and forth. They have just great respect for each other. and a school and a university that obviously went through a bunch this year, and another team that's been hardened. They've gone through and played in arguably the best or second best conference in the country and prepared them for this. Tyson Walker, you see these players that transfer up. They go up a level. They go to the high major level. He had a great career at Northeastern. Sometimes that transfer up doesn't always work, but it worked in that case for him. He went to the right program with the right coach and is just absolutely flourishing. So it's great to see. It's great for Coach Izzo. You talk about legends of the game. Just me growing up, and I remember that 2000 Final Four versus Florida with Mateen Cleaves, but he's one of those guys that's still there and still doing it and still doing it at a high level.
Yeah, you mentioned that 2003, 68-46 in favor of the Spartans there. I tell you, you mentioned several coaches that have been incredibly impressive, but so far, Coach, what has kind of caught your eye that's either been positive, negative, that has kind of surprised you a little bit thus far in this tournament?
I just think the parity, right? I mean, you look at the Sweet 16, and I saw something today, and I could not disagree with Andy Katz more. I think he had, of the Sweet 16, he had FAU as the 16th best team in the Sweet 16. Totally disagree with that take. But you look at the parity in college basketball, and that's why this is where we are. You've got Princeton that's in the Sweet 16. You've got FAU that's in the Sweet 16. You've got Tennessee that a lot of people counted out with no Zakai Ziegler for what they went through. They're sitting there in the Sweet 16. Xavier, Creighton. I mean, just the parity in college basketball is maybe better this year than it's ever been. And I think that's the biggest thing that stands out to me.
Coach Matt McCall joining us here, Sharp Money, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. I need Gonzaga UCLA like tonight. By the way, you're down in Florida. That's going to tip at like 10 o'clock your time, so you got to stay up for it, Coach. But a contrast in styles, right? UCLA, 2-point shots, defense, slower pace. Amal's highlighted the injuries. Somehow they're still here. And then Gonzaga, run, get out and go. Timmy, we know the story. Give me an idea of the matchup here.
Yeah, and I think, too, highlighting the injuries for UCLA, much like Tennessee, that's another team that a lot of the experts said, maybe they can make it to the second weekend, but they're not getting past the Sweet 16 because of the injuries that they've had. I think Gonzaga is a team, as crazy as this is going to be to say, that has flown under the radar because of the games that they lost in November and December, and even losing to St. Mary's in conference play. Everyone's kind of like, I don't know about the Zags, right? Going into this season, it was like, can Mark Few get over the hump? Like, well, what does that mean? I guess, getting over the hump means winning a national championship. I think they're a team because of Drew Timme and Mark Few that could legitimately win this whole thing because of the parity in college basketball. The matchup with Arkansas and UConn is going to be absolutely phenomenal. This game is going to be unbelievable with Gonzaga and UCLA. But I look at Gonzaga, I look at Timme, I look at Mark Few, and I look at the balance they have on their roster and what they've gone through this year and the adversity that they've gone through and come out on the other side and find themselves in the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. I think they're a team that could cut down the nets in Houston. I really believe that because I don't think you look at it right now, Alabama, Houston, another team that's kind of just handled business along the way. I put Alabama in that same category. But, man, don't count out Gonzaga. I mean, they could legitimately win this thing.
Completely agree with you. Bolton and Strother's ability to shoot the ball, and Timme is an absolute masterpiece underneath the basket. Last year, remember, in Vegas, Gonzaga beat UCLA 83-63 during the non-conference part of the schedule. Coach, I want to go to a tremendous matchup in the Midwest in terms of coaching between Houston and Miami. Kelvin Sampson, who's already been to a couple of Final Fours, Jim Larinaga at Miami, who took that George Mason team to a Final Four. Houston comes in as a 7-point favorite. I thought the Cougars, in my opinion, played the best 20 minutes of basketball in Birmingham in the second half in what was a road game. I don't know who the hell Auburn's paying. I know they pay their players in football, but I didn't know they're paying the committee in basketball to get that game there. But Kelvin Sampson's teams, Sasser, Tremont Mark, and, of course, Shed, these guys were outstanding in terms of what they were doing in the second half. Break this one down for me a little bit and talk about the coaching matchup and how you see it. I think it's the best one on paper.
Well, I think you bring up a great point, too. Like, how right when the brackets came out, and I'm like, you're telling me Bruce Pearl and his Auburn team is going to play in the second round versus Houston in Birmingham? How is that even possible? And it seemed just like Houston in that game, even though they got down, just had blinders on. And they were just completely focused. Sasser, shit, like those guys were just laser focused and locked in on, hey, we just got to do what we got to do to win this basketball game. Tremendous respect for Jim Larrañaga. I mean, you talk about the state of Florida. You got Florida Atlantic and Miami are the two premier programs this year in the state, and they're both in the Sweet 16. If you would have said that before the season, everyone would have looked at you like you're nuts. You mean to tell me Florida and Florida State are not going to be in that position? Those two programs are, two legends of the game, guys that have been at their respective places for a long time and just continue to have success. The coaching matchup is going to be outstanding in that. You've got Sasser versus Wong, two of the best guards in the country. That matchup is going to be outstanding to watch. That's going to be a fun one, no question about it. And on the other side of it, that Texas team has come together, and they have talent. And sometimes you need something drastic to happen in a season to do something special, and that's exactly what has happened at Texas, and I think that's why they're having so much success.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.